One of the most famous battles of the Clone Wars was the Battle of Coruscant, the dramatic climax of the largest conflict in galactic history. The battle is noteworthy not just because of its scale or what actually happened during it, but also for its setting alone. Coruscant, the capital of the galaxy, a planet that hadn't seen a war for over 1,000 years. Except that last bit wasn't true. Not exactly. Even before the Battle of Coruscant itself, the galactic capital wasn't spared from the chaos of the Clone Wars. It was the site of intrigue, assassinations, and sabotage missions, and part of it was very briefly attacked by the CIS directly early in the conflict. But one of the most impactful skirmishes on Coruscant was a commando mission in 21 BBY aimed at rooting out a terrorist cell.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
As the capital of the Galactic Republic, you would be excused for thinking that Coruscant was a loyalist world through and through. But that wasn't entirely true. The people who controlled Coruscant, the wealthy denizens of the upper city, were pretty firmly loyalist, but the people who lived in Coruscant's depths weren't. Most of Coruscant's population lived below the surface of Galactic City, spread across thousands of levels that never saw the light of day, and never saw proper political representation either. These districts ranged from thousands of anonymous, interchangeable middle-class districts to the vast slums of the Undercity. And the people who lived there weren't so firm in their loyalty to the Republic any more than the Republic was firm in its loyalty to them. The Republic and Coruscant's planetary government near exclusively represented the people who lived in the planet's upper districts. Those in lower districts were pretty much left to their own devices until they caused problems for the people on the surface, at which point the Coruscant security force would come down and brutalize people until the problems stopped. As you might expect, this didn't exactly inspire loyalty in the people of the lower levels. Most were indifferent to the fate of the Republic, but some were radicalized by their treatment and aligned themselves with the Separatists. Thus, despite being the capital of the Republic, Coruscant had a sizable population of Separatists, and though most of them were forced to keep their beliefs under wraps, there were more Separatists on Coruscant than there were on entire Separatist planets. Fortunately for the Republic, these Separatists were scattered all across Galactic City. Many kept their beliefs private for the entire length of the war, but some were determined to act. During the early stages of the Separatist crisis, some of these beings had carried out terrorist bombings on Coruscant's surface. Many of these terrorists were caught and/or killed, but there were always more to take their place. This number only grew as the Clone Wars went on and began to transform Coruscant. After the Battle of Geonosis, the Republic leveled entire neighborhoods to make way for military bases and staging grounds, rendering thousands of Coruscanti homeless. Protests against these changes were met with intensely violent crackdowns carried out by the newly formed Coruscant Guard. Thus, as the war continued and these abuses began to pile up, organized separatist terrorist cells formed on Coruscant. Most of these were small and independent, but some were in contact with the CIS and quite well organized. In 21 BBY, one of the more organized cells orchestrated the bombing of Depot Bravo 5, a GAR military base. 15 clone troopers were killed, a lot of equipment was lost, and the base suffered extensive damage. In response to the incident, Republic authorities called for a crackdown on the Coruscanti Separatists, and a joint anti-terrorism task force was formed. The Coruscant Security Force teamed up with the Republic Special Operations Brigade to investigate and bring down the cell responsible for the bombing. The Delta Squad, Omega Squad, and several of the Null-class ARC troopers participated, as did the Mandalorian Commando trainers Cal Skirata and Wallon Val, and the Jedi Padawan E10 Tar-Mukan. Within a short while, the task force had determined the identities of several terrorists affiliated with the group. By watching them, they discovered a traitor in GAR logistics that had been slipping the terrorists explosives for use in their attacks. This traitor, Vina Jis, was interrogated and then killed. The team deduced that there were more leaks in GAR logistics, but more investigation into the matter was necessary. In the meantime, they started up a fake arms dealing business in the Coruscant Underworld, hoping to bait the terrorists into purchasing weapons tagged with tracking devices. The terrorists took the bait. Thanks to this, the task force was able to identify the leader of the terrorist cell, a being named Parive. Not long after this breakthrough, the additional moles in GAR logistics were found and eliminated thanks to Jinnart, the Gurlanen you might remember from our video about Killura. Jinnart had been posing as Vina Jis, it turned out, and she had infiltrated the GAR in protest over their handling of local politics on Killura, as we mentioned in that video. Nonetheless, she decided to help Republic forces out, and they granted her some concessions. After this, Cal Scarada, the leader of the Republic's Spec Ops side of the task force, determined that the team had enough intel to execute its crackdown. He arranged a meetup with Parive to sell him some explosives for the next attack, and the terrorists agreed. But the CSF caused problems for the Sting when they arrested one of the terrorists before the proposed meeting, which caused the cell to panic. Parive moved the meeting up by 24 hours and changed his mind about showing up in person. Nonetheless, Scarada made the call to go ahead with the operation anyway. Wallen Val and Etain Tar-Mukan were sent to assassinate Parive while the Commandos saw to the meetup. Everything went to plan. Parive was killed, and Delta and Omega squads attacked during Scarada's fake arms deal, killing 26 of the terrorists in a shootout. Republic forces didn't suffer any casualties. Following this, the CSF made their own move, arresting 90 additional terrorists that they had linked to Parive and his men. This crackdown shattered Parive's network, preventing them from carrying out any further bombings. The mission was deemed a success, and Scarada and his men celebrated by throwing a rave the following night. The Republic Holonet News touted this sting as a major victory, a serious blow to Separatist cells on Coruscant. But this wasn't the end of Separatist activity on Coruscant, nor the end of terrorist attacks on the galactic capital. As the Clone Wars went on, terrorist activity continued. Former Supreme Chancellor Valorum and thousands of others were killed in the bombing of a passenger liner just a year later. As a result of the continuing attacks, the Republic began to clamp down on the Coruscant Underworld. A Security Act passed in 21 BBY gave the Coruscant Guard and Republic intelligence a blank check to violate the civil rights of loyalist citizens, and harsh crackdowns were imposed on the Underworld, which was subjected to curfews and Republic military patrols. Further security acts were passed as the war went on, taking away additional civil rights and turning formerly lively parts of the Underworld into ghost towns for fear of the Coruscant Guard. The Republic began carrying out random, warrantless searches of houses in the Underworld, making arrests based on the slightest suspicion and harassing anyone that showed the slightest hint of disloyalty. Non-humans were targeted disproportionately, and entire species were deemed separatist and deported from Coruscant altogether. Not even the inhabitants of the upper city were spared. Coruscant Guard checkpoints sprung up all over the place, and even senators were occasionally pressed for identification by shock troopers. The reign of the Empire began early on Coruscant, and by the time the Clone Wars were over, the planet was already a police state. The kicker is that this draconian nonsense did nothing to stop the rise of separatism on Coruscant. Quite the contrary, it radicalized even more people. Thus, when the Battle of Coruscant happened and the CIS deployed droid armies onto Coruscant's surface, the planet's defenders had to fight a war on two fronts. Grievous's battle droids were joined by ad hoc armies of separatists in the Underworld who rose up against the Coruscant Guard when the planet came under attack. They were crushed, of course, and it was this, not all the repression, that meant the end of the Coruscanti separatists. So that's our look at Coruscant's 21 BBY crackdown on separatist terror cells. But what do you think? Would you like to hear more about Coruscant during the Clone Wars, or any other aspect of this interesting planet? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.